Okay, guys, let's get started. Today we're talking about literature review and search. But before I start, let me first mention you will get the next assignment. It's not up yet. I will upload it by tomorrow. So you will find it on Blackboard, and then it will be the assignment for the next week's seminars. Okay. You might wonder, what the hell was this with the cow, right? And where do we go with this? And hold your breath. Hold your breath for a little bit, because there will be a bigger debrief session about the study that you participated in. So next Wednesday, I'm going to talk in more detail about that. And actually, I'm going to talk about that in the context of yet another experiment that you guys will participate. So you will see a lot of research actually happening. So while we are on Wednesday, one thing that I noticed is, this is, for most of you, this is sort of the second semester at university. There's a lot of things happening. I know, this is, as I said at the beginning, this is an incredible speed. This is how the university goes. It's a lot to take in, and I can see that you might be lost sometimes, right? So what's happening here? So I thought, okay, well, I had planned to have these review sessions of this course at the end of the term. So I decided to have one on Wednesday. So on Wednesday, we will review the contents that we had so far. We will have that with two things. First of all, we're going to have an awesome quiz. It's going to be quiz day. Right? It's going to be the extended version of the quiz. And it's going to be a great way for you to assess where you stand, where you are, right? Where you might have to go back, something that you have not understood. So I think that's going to be a good opportunity for you to catch up on stuff. I think it's much better to stay on top of things than trying to catch up at the end of the day. So I'm a big fan of continuous learning. So we will have a big quiz day, and in the context of that, we'll also have a little time for Q&A, where you can post questions about topics or other things that you would want me to focus on during this week. You can post that in Blackboard, in the discussion board. So I put up a little forum, a little session there. You see, we have a discussion forum. Guys, draw on the wisdom of the crowd here. There is a little session there, a little section there where you can post questions or topics you would like me to focus on Wednesday. And I promise you, it's going to be so much fun. It's going to be so much fun. If you like this stuff, Wednesday is going to be so much fun. I wish it would be Wednesday already. Yeah. I wish it would be Wednesday already. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be really cool. Okay, so let's get started with this today about literature review and literature search. So the things that I brought with me. Today I have 4 topics that I would like to talk with you. Let's see if we get to all of them. First, I want to talk to you about citations. What is a citation? How does it work? Then, what is a literature review? Why do we do that? Then, 5 steps in the literature review. How does the whole thing actually work? How does it go? What do you have to do? And the last thing, if we have time, I want to talk to you about plagiarism. Okay. So first, let's talk about citation. So what is citation? Citation is not an eye disease. Yeah. It's not an eye disease. It's referencing the sources that you're using for your work. Right? Basically, we have in-text citations. When you read articles, or even the stuff that you already read for this course, the little textbook, sometimes you see a little parenthesis, and then there's a name in it, Bryman 2012, or something like that, right? Or even when I'm presenting stuff here, oftentimes I have a citation, I have things in quotation marks, and then I have the name at the end of it, and there you can find the name, the year, and ideally also a page number. So it's citing the references. Citing is referencing your sources within the text you're writing, and that's what we call in-text citation. But I have an example for that. The referencing is acknowledging in detail all the information. This can come from books, journals, articles, or even web pages that you used to complete your assignment or your writing. Right? And usually what you see, how the citations work, where there's a component within the text, right? That's the in-text citation, and then there's a bibliography at the end of the text. Right? And that's sort of where you look up, okay, what does Bryman 2012 actually mean? And there you have then the details, there you have the name of the book or the name of the article, there you have the journal article, that's sort of the page number, the issue number, so that you can actually track it down, that you find it. Right? So that's sort of citing. And when you read scholarly articles, this is what we have to do all the time. This is what you have to do all the time when you write a thesis, when you write a master's thesis, or eventually maybe a PhD thesis. It's incredibly important. There are two kinds of citations, so two basic kinds. The first one is sort of a direct quote. Yeah? Direct quote is really quote, parenthesis here, quote, quotation marks, and then you quote in text. Yeah? So whenever you use more than 3 consecutive words from another text, you need to quote. Yeah? Quotation marks around it, and then give us the source where you got that quote from. The second one, equally important, is paraphrasing. So paraphrasing means that you paraphrase an idea, a thought, essentially intellectual property that somebody else wrote, right? That somebody else had. And so when you, for example, let's go back to the first one, to the direct quote, right? So remember, I had a quote from Elster, about this hypothetical deductive model that we talked about, this really cool thing. And here now I have a quote inside the text. That's an in-text citation. All right. One factor to explain more standing ovations in Broadway shows is that people, quote, cannot admit to themselves that the show was poor or mediocre. Now you see, these are the words that Elster used. These are more than 3 consecutive words that Elster used, so I'm quoting this here. Right? While in the paraphrasing case, there the example would be one possible explanation why there are more standing ovations in Broadway shows could be the increase in ticket prices. You see, this is not a direct quote. Right now, I'm not using the words of Elster, but I'm using his idea. I'm using his idea. There's nothing that I came up with the increased ticket prices. If I would actually not quote Elster here, I would pretend that I came up with that, but I didn't. Actually, this would be plagiarism already. This would be stealing the thoughts, the ideas of somebody else. And so this is sort of now a paraphrasing quotation. And you see paraphrasing quotation, I also have the page number, right? So in the ideal world, then I can go back into the original source. I can look up, okay, Elster, I can look up his book, I can find it. I have the bibliography at the end of my text somewhere, and I can go to page number 17, and this is where he makes this argument. Yeah? So that's direct quote and paraphrasing. These are the two basic kinds of citations. So why do we do cite? Well, first of all, it allows readers to find further information about the sources you have used. So I'm citing here Elster, I'm putting it up there, so that actually you can then look it up at home. That's sort of the idea. You can then go home and then you see, okay, Elster wrote that, okay, 2007, page number 17, this is where I have to go, this is where I find this hypothetical deductive model. Right? So that's sort of the first thing. Second thing, well, we need to acknowledge the thoughts and the ideas and the quotations from other people. That's like, this is what they produced. That's what they came up with. So we need to give credit where credit is due. But also lastly, it helps us, and this is actually very important as well, it helps us to build on the shoulders of others. Right? If we don't quote, we don't connect to the literature. If we don't cite, we are not connected to the literature, and others don't find us either. Right? So through citations, through quotations, we sort of engage with the debate, with the discussion, and we build on that. So I have a little example here. So this is sort of an article that I wrote not too long ago. It's a really funny article because I'm basically showing you with deductive logic that your friends are more important and special than you think. Actually, right now I'm writing a paper that your friends are actually also healthier and better looking than you are. Which is funny, but it's purely deductive logic. Anyway, what I'm writing here, this is sort of the first paragraph of this article that I wrote. And I start with this general statement that A large number of studies find associations between the position of individuals in social networks. And then I use the term centrality. It doesn't matter what that is. It's basically how important you are in your network. And their attributes, such as tendency to innovate, and then I have parentheses, then I have a name and a year. Then I have job search, again, parentheses, name and a year, performance, same thing, or even good looks, and so on. Then I go on. In general, such associations are either the result of central individuals adopting certain attributes or alternatively of network ties evolving around individuals with certain attributes, and so on and so forth, right? Actually, even the last sentence is interesting as well, because here I'm saying an important overall aspect, however, is the way such associations affect the experience distribution of attributes among network neighbors. So now I'm playing with the literature here, right? So I'm sort of starting with the general statement, then I actually go in and actually refer to others. I refer to others what they say, that there's this guy, Cite, he wrote a paper 2001, where he basically shows that people who are more central in the networks are the innovators. These are the people who innovate. Or this guy, Grund, he showed that finding a job is related with your position in your network. Or this guy, Brass, and some others, they showed that general performance is related to how central people are in their networks. Right? So these are sort of the ideas that the others had. They wrote papers, they wrote books about this stuff, and I'm citing them. So these are the citations that I'm using here, right? In this article at the very beginning. So this is sort of the first paragraph, how it looks like. And when you write a thesis or when you write any scholarly document, this is what you do. You cite within the text, and then at the end of the text, there's a bibliography or a reference section where the details of these articles are, or of these sources that I used. So remember here I had one was Brass et al. 2014. Now I can go in here, and now there he is. Brass, Daniel, Joseph Galaskiewicz, Henrik Grebe, and Renfried Tsai. They wrote this paper in 2004. There's the name of the paper, taking stock of networks and organizations and multi-level perspectives, and it was published in the Academy of Management Journal, which is a scholarly journal. And then there's sort of the details, the volume number, the issue number, the page number, even the website. So now I can go and now I can read up, okay, what did those guys actually say? So I'm connecting this with my work. So that's basically the idea of citation. And that's what we do. When we cite and when we write these bibliographies at the end of the day, there are different styles, how you can do that. There are different styles. We call them reference or citation styles. The big ones, the most relevant ones for us in the social sciences it's the Harvard style, it's the APA style, it's the American Psychological Association style, or the Chicago style. There's a detailed document about how this in detail works on Blackboard. When you go on Blackboard forms referencing, there's a document there which explains the Harvard style to you. And that's sort of the one that we suggest here at UCD. But at the end of the day, the important thing is that you are coherent, right? And these styles are essentially different ways to write up this thing at the end, right? Do I have first the name and then the year, or do I have first the name and then the title of the publication and then the year? They're very clear guidelines about how this is supposed to look like. So that's what we call a citation style. Right? So here in this style, there's first the name, then there's the year number, then there's in quotation mark the title, and then there's in italics the name of the journal, the volume, and issue number. And that's sort of one citation style. Okay, so these are different citations and different citation styles. Well, let me move on to the second thing I want to talk with you about today. It's literature review. Okay. So basically when you start doing research, and what I hope to do here is to give you an idea about how this research process works, so that it's not just a black box for you anymore, but that you actually know and that you actually are confident and comfortable enough to actually do this, right? And to go ahead with it. And one of the first things is, after you have your question, remember the question is very important. We had a whole session on this. What is the question? How do you get to it? Different ways of finding a question. After you have identified your research question or questions, right, or the research area that you want to study at, the next step in a project is to search the existing literature and write a literature review. So what is a literature review? Well, it's essentially a literature review looks closely, it finds and looks closely, and then summarizes and synthesizes scholarly articles, books, and other sources. It could be dissertations, conference proceedings, or whatnot, that are relevant to a particular research question, area of research, theory, or whatnot. And as I said, a literature review basically gives a description, a summary, and a critical evaluation of the work that has already been done on this particular issue. Right? So when you do some new research, you can fool around. I said fooling around is important, but once you're done with the fooling around stage, you need to be solid about what did others do. Right? And there's a good chance that somebody already worked on this area. Right? It doesn't mean you have to get frustrated about it. Oftentimes there are still things that you can contribute. But you need to know what is the stuff that others already published about this. Yeah? So the kind of questions that you ask when you write a literature review, or the questions that your literature review is supposed to answer, is what is already known about this area. Right? So I'm interested in, say, I don't know, one paper that I'm involved in, we want to look at obesity and homophily. Yeah. It's basically this idea, obesity, it's overweight, it's a problem, it's a health problem, and we're looking at that through a social network perspective, because we know that people are friends with similar others. Right? Your friends are incredibly similar to you, in many respects, age, gender, education, and apparently also in terms of obesity. Right? So we want to look at that. We want to study that. So now the first step is to establish the field. So what did other people already find out about this? Right? So how did they study that? In that process, what concepts and theories are relevant to this area? What research methods and research strategies have been employed in studying this area? So how did others go about finding out about the research question that I'm interested in, or about the topic that I'm interested in? Are there controversies? Often you will see there are a lot of controversies. It's kind of hard for you sometimes to assess, because you sit there and you listen to guys like me and we tell you stuff and you think, oh, this is so cool, and we all agree and we're all happy, right? But there are a lot of controversies in the academic field. And remember how I explained to you how we gain knowledge, right? We have competing theories, and then we look for evidence to support and disprove certain theories. That's exactly how it goes. So there are often these different camps, these different ideas, there are controversies in certain fields. When you write a literature review, it's basically finding out about these controversies as well. Are there any inconsistencies in the findings that people had before? There's something that doesn't make sense, something that they found but others didn't find, or the one study found A and the other one found B, and they are sort of opposing with each other. That's sort of the thing that your literature review is supposed to do. So why do we do this? Yeah. Why do we write a literature review? Well, because basically this is how we go further. And this is sort of how we move on in the academic field. We build on the work of others. But that's sort of this incremental process. This is sort of where we are systematic. Right? This is sort of where we made this advance to accumulate knowledge, to benefit from others, and we move further. So you need to add, in order to add, you need to know what is out there. That's sort of the very beginning of it. Well, outside of the academic field, for professionals, for maybe some of you, literature reviews are extremely useful reports as well, because they keep you up to date with what is current in the field, right? And things change, right? Things change, people have new findings, people add to a certain subfield, to a certain discipline. So literature reviews is basically the summary of what we know. Literature review is building on the shoulders of giants, right? So you can only benefit from building on the work of others. Well, first of all, then you don't have to go back and you don't have to show what they already showed, right? So, for example, I now in this paper about the friends are more important, especially than you think. Now I don't have to show that network position is related with performance. or it's related with innovation. That there's guys who are more central in the network, that they are the innovators. Or I don't even have to show that these are the ones that are better looking, because somebody else already did that, right? So I can build on that. I can move forward from that. But also, a literature review connects your work with previous knowledge, debates, and controversies. And that's one of the things that goes actually in two directions. You relate your work to what others already said, so you contribute to that debate. And by doing your literature review properly, by citing your sources, by engaging with that literature, people can also follow up on that trail. It's like leaving a trail behind, because you can search into both directions, right? So I can search who cited me, for example, and they can search who cited them, in a way, right? And that's actually how it happens all the time, right? Because I don't know who's interested in the world in exactly the same kind of things that I do, right, in the academic field. But through citations, through proper literature review, actually I do know. Because then I'm citing them, and then they get aware of me, or the other way around as well. So it connects you to the previous knowledge, to debates, and even to current controversies. Okay, it's also learning from the mistakes of others. Remember, I said we all make mistakes. Academics make mistakes, and a literature review allows you to learn about the mistakes of others. Right? And the good papers, they are upfront about that. Yeah, you read them, and then you read at the end where they say what didn't work out, right, or the things that they think that somebody could do better, in a way, or what the limitations of the study are, and so on and so forth. Right? So the literature review, by scoping out the literature, by going out and finding the stuff that is relevant for your area, you see not only what others did, but you also see what others did wrong, right? And the kind of mistakes that they made, and this is where your contribution can be in. To then remedy these mistakes, to move forward, to add to the debate. As I said, literature review shows you the limitations and gaps in previous work, and the good stuff, the good papers, they are upfront about that. They don't try to hide that, right? And that's also something when you write a research article or thesis or master thesis, I much more appreciate when people at the end of the day are upfront about that, right? So I don't know. I don't like bullshitting around anyway, and I don't like when people then try to hide the stuff that didn't work out. Be upfront about it. That's how we progress. Be upfront about it, because then I see, okay, within the limits, this is sort of what the guy did. And the other thing couldn't be addressed for whatever reasons, right? And here are the reasons. But then I can move on from it. Then we can kind of add to that later on. So that's sort of really important, not to hide stuff, but to be upfront about the problems, the limitations, and the scope conditions of your study. Okay, but citing others, and writing literature reviews, and doing our homework, and going out and finding out about what others did. Now that's just also the code of practice in the academic world. So without that, it's just not going to happen. Right? It's sort of just a really important thing. And I think not only in the academic world, that's also outside of the academic world. You want to give credit where credit is due, right? So others did something, and then you're supposed to mention that, right? Because that's sort of what they did. They participated in that. They put effort in it, and or for others, to track it down. That's sort of one big thing. Give credit where credit is due. But the other thing is, you don't want to reinvent the wheel as well, right? So by citing and by doing your literature review properly, you can build on the work of others. Remember, I don't have to show that the position in social networks is related to innovation, performance, or to good looks. I can build on the work of others. Yeah. Okay, so that's in a nutshell what a literature review is. Right? And when you do your research, this is sort of one of the first things that you do, along with thinking about your research question. Yeah. You scope out the literature. So how do you do that? Yeah. How do you do that? Well, I have here 5 steps to go about this. Yeah? To go and find your literature, and then to write a review about it. Okay. So these 5 steps are: First, you need to define your topic. You need to be, the better you are at this stage, this is sort of why I was pushing you guys with a research question in one of the first lectures, right? Because the better your research question is, the more precise your research question is, the better you can define the topic of your study, the easier it is for you to do the literature review, right? If you clearly know what is your question, then it's very obvious for you to find out the relevant material. It's very straightforward, right? While when you don't know that, and I see that, I told you I look at ISC grant proposals, I review this kind of stuff, and that people write things and they don't really know where they're going, and then the literature is not really helpful either. Right? Because how are they supposed to tell me something about what is relevant in the field when they don't even know the field yet themselves? Right? So that's sort of why, for me, the primacy of the research question is really important. I think it's a very helpful way of structuring your work as well and getting to the point of it. Okay, so define your research question. Next one is then actually go out and search. And I show you some examples about how this actually works. What are the tools that you use? The third one is probably the most difficult for you guys because you need to filter the information. Right? You need to evaluate stuff. And that's sort of the thing where experience comes in. After a while, you know what is good stuff, or you know who writes good stuff, or you know where you can find good stuff. But for you guys, you don't really know, right? So I'm going to give you a few tips about how to find out what is good stuff or where to find good stuff. Fourth one is then actually analyze the stuff. So you actually did your homework, you went to the library, you looked at online journals, and you printed out all this stuff, you read it, you have it all in front of you, then you look at it, then you summarize it, you extract the core information here, you group it together, and then you synthesize it and make your own argument for it. And lastly, you write this whole thing up. Okay, so let me get started with the topic. Well, as I already mentioned, when you have a clear research question, this is actually really straightforward, right? And that's sort of why I cannot stress this enough for you guys to have a clear research question and really work on that question. So with the guys, that I'm supervising, I'm really pushing that. I'm really pushing, what is your question? So what are we actually looking here? Because it makes our life so much easier as we go along, right? So for example, we want to study this thing about obesity and homophily. Homophily is this tendency that your friends are similar to you in many aspects. In many aspects, when it comes to income, education, gender, public political opinions, all sorts of things. It's a fascinating thing. And here we want to look at how does this actually play out in the health domain as well. Because there are some indications that actually others already found that obesity is homophilous as well. Right? So that anorexic people are friends with other anorexic people, or obese people are friends with other obese people. Right? And this has implications for health interventions, for example. But in this case, it's a very clear it's a clear starting point. It's a clear starting point. With a clearly defined topic like obesity or homophily, then you can now look what did others find out about that. When you don't have a precise research question, I recommend go back and get a precise research question. You can read around, and that's absolutely fine. Read around, get inspired, take some notes here and there, but formulate your research question properly before you go back to the proper literature review. At this stage, when you define your topic, you also think about the strategy and how you're going to go about finding the relevant literature. Right? So what are the systematic ways to find the relevant piece of information, right? So you think about keywords, you think about, okay, am I going to look at the last 5 years only? Am I going to look at the last 10 years? What has been published on the topic there? And what are the kind of journals that I'm going to look at? Am I only going to look at sociology journals? Am I also going to look at psychology journals? That's sort of where you define your strategy, where you need to be, where you define for yourself the topic and the way you go about finding the relevant literature. And when you do these kind of things, when you do this the first time, it's utterly frustrating because you realize there's so much stuff out there, so many people wrote things about stuff. The key here really is when you have a clear strategy, you are within these boundaries, right? Then it's fine. Then you say, okay, I looked at the sociology literature, I looked at the last 5 years. This is what I found. This is where I am. Right? And then you do that as solid and as stringent and coherent as possible. So that's sort of where you formulate this strategy. But in the reading, there was more about how to be systematic about that. Okay, the next thing is you then actually search the stuff. Yeah, you search the literature. So how do you search the literature? Well, go to the library, or actually nowadays the internet is an amazing starting place. It made our lives a lot easier for academics as well. To be honest, I don't even know how people did stuff before. However, about the internet, be careful. You find a lot of crazy things out there. So when you Google some things, there's some weird stuff, and the problem for you guys is to distinguish the good from the bad stuff, right? So it's sort of how do I find the credible sources, the credibility. That's sort of the key element here, right? And luckily, there are sort of good academic tools in the internet as well that you use to get to credible sources. So if you haven't already checked it out, the library at UCD has a fantastic website. They provide a lot of online tools and resources that are really helpful in doing your stuff. One of the first starting places is what they call UCD One Search. You click on it, you just type in your search key. I would type in obesity and homophily, and then I get it searches a whole bunch of other databases, and I get a list of relevant publications to that, right? So that's sort of one of the first things to do. But then there are also databases. Databases. What are databases? Databases are basically subject-specific catalogs, right, or databases that compile the information in the field. When you click on databases here at the UCD website, you find a long list of stuff. You can choose a subject area. Let's say you choose sociology, and then you still find at least 2 or 3 pages of stuff. Very useful databases. For example, you find the Irish Newspaper Archive, where you can get hold of any newspaper published in Ireland in the last 150 years. It's a great research tool. But there are also these databases to find literature. And I'm going to mention now 3 of them. 3 that I find useful. Okay, the first one is the Web of Science. So when you click your way through this database stuff, right, through UCD, then you come to this website. And these things are actually services that are being offered to universities. So if you just Google Web of Science, you're not going to get to that, right? You need to go through your university. Then you log in, basically, you have your UCD Connect details and so on, and then you get access to these databases. That's how it works. So your starting point is the library website of UCD, of your university. And Web of Science, that's basically how it looks like. It's basically like a Google for academics, right? And what it Googles is basically all the articles that have been published and that have been digitized in the last, 1,500 years or so on. It's crazy, right? It's crazy, but it's incredibly useful. So this is sort of where you start. You type in your search key. Now obesity and homophily. That's sort of the stuff that I'm interested in. And then I get a list. And I can sort it by year or also by citation. But I'll come back to that in a second. Okay, the Web of Science. Second one, sociological abstracts. Sociological abstracts. Again, it's a database. It's a sociology-specific database that I think is useful. You click your way through the UCD library website. You select sociology as a subject, and there you find sociological abstracts. Same thing. It's again like you type in a search key, obesity, homophily, and now you actually see, now I have the result already. It lists actually lists a whole bunch of things. But here you see the first 2 entries. The first one is, for example, homophily and contagion as explanation for weight similarities among adolescent friends. That sort of sounds great. It sounds exactly along the alley of what I've been looking for, right? Basically, what you do then, you go through the list of these results, right? You go through the list of the results, you look at them, and then you filter them, right? Okay, a third tool that I'm using, and that is also incredibly useful, is actually Google Scholar. So Google has a Scholar-specific search platform. If you Google Scholar, you find it, and that's incredibly useful as well. And actually, Google is an amazing search engine, they actually use the wisdom of the crowd, kind of the similar stuff that you guys did with the cow last week. That's sort of what stands behind that search algorithm. And here, I type in my search key, obesity and homophily, and now I get another list of things, right, of the articles, and some already overlap. Here you see, for example, that's the article that I've just found in the Sociological abstracts as well. So that seems to be relevant. I find it from multiple sources, starting from different things. But now the other thing that I like about Google Scholars is now you also see the number of citations here, right? So that means how many times did somebody else cite this particular article? Remember what I said, citation, it's sort of referring to this kind of work in something else. So that's sort of this idea, how you can get a grasp for, is this sort of the key publication here? Is this something really important? If a lot of other people cited that piece of work, it seems to be highly relevant, or it seems to be appreciated by the community, it seems to be important, right? So that's sort of looking at the citations that you have. And these are three basic sources how you can start your literature search, right? Through databases. A few tips that I have here, stuff that I do, because you will still find a lot of material. Stuff that I do. First, I start with articles published in annual reviews. What are annual reviews? Annual reviews are basically specific journals. There's sort of the annual review of sociology, there's the annual review of psychology, there's the annual review of public health or whatnot. So there's sort of a whole bunch of discipline-specific annual reviews. And these annual reviews, they are highly ranked journals. They're sort of where the best of the best in the discipline, once in a while, summarize the state of knowledge for a particular field. The whole purpose of articles and annual reviews are to give you a summary of the state of affairs. What do we know about intergenerational mobility? Right? You look up in the annual reviews, there's sort of a summary article that summarizes the debates, digests it for you, sort of where you see where are we right now. Or what do we know about complexity in the society, right? So just recently there was an article about that in the annual review of sociology, which summarizes the knowledge that we have at this particular stage. And then you see actually for the big topics, like something like, I don't know, intergenerational mobility or so on, you actually have every 10, 15 years or so, there's a new review article, right, where people review the last 10, 15 years. So that's incredibly useful because these annual review articles, they already do a literature review, right? So it doesn't mean you should copy them, right? But you kind of get a quick starting idea of what are the relevant debates, who are the key players, what are the different concepts, the themes, and methods that people use. The second one, in a similar way, are handbook articles. Handbooks are not journal articles, they're sort of these big books that you will never buy yourself because they're incredibly expensive. There's sort of heavy things like that. But libraries have them. Libraries are required to buy the handbooks. And handbooks also give a summary of specific fields. So for example, if you want to know about the kind of stuff that I do, analytical sociology, there's a handbook of analytical sociology. Or there's a handbook of social psychology. Or there's a handbook of organizational studies. Right? Then you look in and there are different chapters in there that kind of have the aim to summarize the field. Basically, it's an introductory text at an advanced level. Okay, the second tip that I have here, start with the most recent literature on your question or on the topic and then work your way backwards, right? Because the most recent stuff, those guys actually, if you look at something that was published 20 years ago, those guys don't cite the stuff that happened ever since, right? So when you start with the most recent work, so in the case of obesity and homophily, I would start with the most recent relevant piece of work and then I work my way backwards from there. The third advice that I can give, identify one or two key publications. That's actually extremely useful when you actually know, okay, this is sort of the stuff that resembles most of what I want to do. Right? This is sort of the key publication for the kind of question that I have. And then you can start a spider search from there. Spider search means basically you look at who cited this person and who was cited by this person. And then you move out And you do the same thing, and you do the same thing, and you do the same thing, and you create your own little web, and you will see overlaps, and that kind of shows you what is important in the field and what is not that important. Okay, but the problem is there's so much out there, and you need to evaluate these kind of things, right? So sometimes when you type in something in Google search, you have 1,500 results on obesity and homophilia. What are you going to do? Are you going to read 1,500 papers? It's not going to happen. You can't do that. You need to filter somehow. And why do you need to filter? Because there's a lot of crap out there. Right? So nowadays people publish a lot of bullshit, and you need to find out what is good and what is bad. How can you do that? Well, a good place to start is look at the syllabus that you have for a course. Now for this course, this is still an introductory class. You have an introductory textbook, but as you move on, you'll have more detailed information in the syllabus. So for example, I'm teaching a second year course. They have a more detailed syllabus with specific articles. That's sort of a good place to start, because that's something where somebody already made a selection for you. Right? That's where somebody like me kind of selected some pieces of work that I think are important and that are good in that field. You can look at, is there an authority in the field? Right? Is somebody important who wrote something, or is it somebody who's not that important in the field? Right? How we often do that in the academic field, we look at where was it published. Right? So we have our little publications. That's sort of what we do day in, day out. We write little papers and we send them to the journals, and we try to get published in these journals. Right? And it's a long process. There's a peer review process and so on. But there are clearly some good and some bad journals. Some good and bad journals. Remember what I already mentioned before in sociology, the two top journals, it's the AJS, it's the American Journal of Sociology, that's the top left, and the American Sociological. These are clearly the two best journals in the field. This is sort of where you want to go. This is where you find the best stuff. Then there are a whole bunch of other journals that are also peer-reviewed. Right? They're also peer-reviewed. That means when I send something there, it's not just being accepted straight out of the bat, but somebody really looks at it and makes comments and makes suggestions and says this needs to be changed, this needs to be changed, and so on. And oftentimes you have 2 or 3 reviewers and then the editor on the top of that, and that's sort of the process of peer review. Actually, I do that all the time as well. I get kind of requests from journals like this. They send me papers, and then I have to write my comments about it. I have to say, okay, this argument here doesn't work, or that sort of is problematic, and so on. And then I require the author to make changes. That's sort of peer review. That's sort of a quality control that we have. That's sort of why journal publications is a good place to start to find stuff, because there you have quality control. Like you have somebody checking the stuff. And for these journals, we also have these different journals have impact factors, like how cool are they, right? Or how amazing are they? And you can Google these impact factors for these different journals. And usually articles in better journals are also better. Finally, some people have strong opinions against these impact factors. But when you look at that, it's mostly the people who actually don't publish anything. So it's the guys that just don't produce anything. And when you look at the impact factors, you actually realize they're not that cool. Yeah? So if you want to find out about somebody, if some academics, look at what they publish, how much they publish, and where they publish. Okay, the same thing with books. With books, it's less straightforward to find out what are sort of the top places to get something published. But clearly, when you have a book from one of the major university presses, they tend to be better quality as well. Why? Well, oftentimes they have more resources. They have a real editing process, a real review process. While when you find something, nowadays there's these dodgy and really weird publishing houses. You basically just send something to them and they print it, and you think, oh, that's great, I got published, but it's not really. There's no quality control here. Right? Okay, so another thing how to find out the good stuff is the citation spider search that I remembered earlier, that I mentioned earlier. Citations. Remember, it was sort of citing somebody, referring to somebody in some piece of work, and you can look at how many times did a journal article get cited by others, how many times did a book get cited by others, and that sort of gives you an idea about how much the community appreciates a particular work. So it's a spider search idea. Okay, so you find stuff, you search stuff, and then you analyze this. And seriously, this is how it looks like in my office when I get into a new topic or when I'm preparing for I don't know, for a new lecture or something. I'm surrounded by papers, it's a huge mess. I'm looking at it, I sort it out, and then at some point, it all makes sense. Yeah? So that's sort of the analyzing stage. What you do, you take notes of the literature as you read. What I do, I already paraphrase my findings as I read. That saves me a lot of time. That makes me more efficient. And then I organize the findings of the literature review into particular themes. I group them, and then you synthesize them. That means you try to find, okay, what are sort of the similarities here? What are the differences? What are the controversies? What are the weaknesses? Right? Lastly, you put it in the context of the stuff that you want to do. Right? Remember, the question is sort of the starting point. The question is, the literature review only helps you to get closer to your research question, to find an answer to your research question. So you need to use the literature review not just for itself, but you need to use it to help you to answer your question. Okay, so the fifth point that I have here is then you actually write it up. Yeah? You write it up, and when you write a literature review, there are essentially three parts of a literature review. First one is an introduction, gives a quick idea of the topic of the literature review, such as the central theme or the organizational pattern. Then you have a body in your literature review. It's like a mini paper in itself, and there you have discussion of the sources that you have, and you group them. And you group them. Well, there are three different ways how you can group stuff: chronologically, thematically, or methodologically. Chronologically means that, okay, in the last 5 years, this is what people wrote. 10 years ago, this is what they wrote about this topic, and so on. Thematically means you group it into certain themes, right? Or methodologically, you group it by how people approach stuff. Okay, and then the third part is you have a conclusion and recommendations. So you synthesize the research that you looked at, and then you discuss what you have drawn from the previous from reviewing the literature, and you discuss how it relates to your own stuff. Okay, so I have some more stuff on plagiarism, but we do that next week. Remember, Wednesday is fun day. Post your questions and topics that you would like me to review in Blackboard, in the discussion forum, and see you on Wednesday. Thanks.